so much, everyone from around the world joining us for the future of audience targeting. It's marketing in 2021 and going forward. So we are the 4 marketers and we're really excited to be presenting to you today. So I will start by introducing myself and then I'll pass over to Kristin and so on. So just here, next slide. So my name, as I said, is Christopher Melotti from Melotti Media, and we are message marketers and copywriters. We help you write words that engage audiences, inspire action, and achieve results. Kristin?
Thanks, Chris. Good evening, everybody. My name's Kristin Hancock and I'm from Font and Swatch Branding and Design Studio. We create profound brands and visual media that make our customers unique, relevant, and trusted. Arielle.
Hi everyone, I'm Arielle Peters from Two Giraffes. We are a full-service video production and animation studio. We work with household names, startups, education, government, from anything from TV commercials, explainer videos, and multi-platform creative ads. Mike?
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Sandys, Managing Director of Oddball Marketing. We're a results-driven marketing agency.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. All right. So we are going to be talking about the cookieless future of marketing and what that means for audience targeting. So without further ado, we will jump right in. So let's talk about why the landscape is changing, everyone. So I'll do a quick start. So as we know, marketing and the landscape are changing. For all those who aren't aware, Google and Apple and a lot of browsers are making this trend towards changing the way that we search online. And that has come in response to a lot of privacy and anonymity concerns around audiences. And this is happening all around the world. People are starting to get very suspicious around how we look at things and what companies are collecting what data. And so that has spurred this whole trend in consumers of increased awareness around companies' data use. And so it's really important that marketing starts to adapt now because these changes are on the way and are going to affect the way that we address and engage our customers. And so what is going to be happening is the biggest challenge is the removal of third-party cookies. And that involves data security and the like. So we will go through it. And so Kristin, do you want to talk about, sorry, I have a few screens open here, about the current approach to digital audience targeting?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think I'd probably add on there, one of the big things that's driving this is it's people's increased awareness, but their lack of consent over the use of their data. And that chimes in well with what is on the slide in front of us now, which is the current approach. So there's 2 primary cookies that are used. I think most people know what cookies are. They're effectively a fingerprint that are left either on your website and they pretty much follow you around. So a first-party cookie is when the data is entered into the website that you're visiting and you've actually entered that data and they hold it and they use that data on you to identify you. Simple things like when you're shopping on a website and you are putting multiple items into the website, you might do one transaction and then come to look to do another one. It's the first party cookie that allows that website to realize it's you that keeps doing it. The difference between those and a third party cookie is a third party cookie is put on there without your consent. So the third party ones are the ones that follow you around and they're used by pretty much every social media website that you go on, whether it be Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. They're used by Google, they're used by Apple historically. And these are the ones that marketers have historically used to provide different types of marketing targeted specifically to you. So the way they're doing that is they're almost looking over your shoulder, watching where you're going, and then saying, based on your behavior specific to you, I'm going to now target you with specific ads. And it's really, really finite, really, really detailed and extremely useful data capturing for audience profiling, which enables the ads that you see to be really tailored to you. So in that sense, it has been really good, but a lot of the time, particularly with third-party cookies, people haven't given their consent for that use of data, and it's really, really bespoke data about it, even down to what credit card transactions did I do, where did I do them, and how often and at what times do I do them.
Yeah.
So, it's a bit too specific with for people that haven't been asked whether that data is okay to use. And that's why you're seeing, as we saw on the last screen, that's why you're seeing a lot of the key authorities in Europe and UK really starting to say it's not cool.
Yeah, and that's what's happening, Kristin. Like, further to your message is, and that was a great intro to. I hope everyone paid good attention to that, because that was excellent. So, and that's what it's leading to, is that the backlash, and we were all discussing this as a panel recently, where it feels like marketing got so far with all of these really specific targeting profile, and now we're taking a backward step because of the changes. Mike, do you want to weigh in here a little bit about what does the future look like now that with all these changes that are coming in?
Oh, look, I think it's overdue as such on one hand, in terms of the amount of profiling capabilities we've had for so long. It's been fantastic. So it doesn't really come as a surprise, I guess, that these sort of behaviors are occurring, that we're seeing, what's happening in terms of Europe with the GDPR, and now in terms of particular looking at sort of the US and California in particular with their Consumer Privacy Act. It's really about people sort of getting to know how their data is being used, how they're being tracked, and so having a little bit more transparency to things. So that's going to continue to play out. So I think that sort of kind of golden age that we've had in terms of marketing and the ability to target people, particularly through display and website interactions, I think that's changing. They're still trying. They're still looking at some other solutions to this in terms of replacing cookies. But the idea is that it's supposed to take away from the ability to personally or individually identify a user, which I think is a good thing. I think we all think it's a good thing.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it means what fallout is that for marketing?
Yeah, and it's about pivoting now that that's happening and knowing what to do about it. Yeah.
And so that's sooner than we think.
Go a little lazy, right? Not lazy, but we've really counted upon cookies, and now we're going to have to reimagine and get creative again to get to our audience.
Yeah.
Great, and it's soon too. You can see here that fourth point there is that it's Google is phasing it out in 23, 24, which is, it sounds like ages away, but it's not. It's changing.
And I think, Chris, well, you can see the three on there have already done it. So Firefox has already done it, Safari's already done it, and iOS 14.5, which is the update from Apple, they have done it. So it's here now, and it is causing a lot of marketing agencies, a lot of different platforms to start to rethink how they capture and use data. And as you said, Mike, this is a good thing. I think as marketers, that possibly we went a little bit too far in terms of what was available to for the use of data. And I think that now that the legislation is coming through, it's giving the marketers, it's taking that question of whether that data should be used or shouldn't be used. Before it was each individual agency's moral obligation. Now it's more like there's legislation saying, no, this isn't okay. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, the internet was a wild west, right? Everything was moving so quickly. We were able to really get all this targeting happening. We were utilizing every little capability we had as companies and corporations to get to our audience. And now regulations are catching up.
Yeah. And it's not, look, it will evolve. So it's not like all of a sudden we're going back to the dark ages, and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I was about to say we can move.
Yeah, I think one of the final point on there is worth noting, though, Chris, and that is that now that people are being given the option and are actually being asked whether they consent to the use of their data, there have been studies that have coming out of the US already that are suggesting that less than 20% and sometimes less than 15% of people are saying, yes, it's okay. So that gives you a clear indication as to when people are made aware of what the data might be used for, a lot of the time they're saying no.
However,
so 3 out of 4 times
they're
also
saying no. That they want ads that are bespoke to them. So
it's a bit of a catch-22.
That's a good point.
Really good point. When you get specifically asked that, of course you're going to say, well, no, I don't want these people getting all my information. But I think as that happens over all these other platforms, there is, and we're going to talk about ways to implement this, but there is going to be that moment where consumers are going to go, oh, right. There's some positive aspects to that.
Yeah. And let's have a talk about that. Yeah. So what impacts might this have? and where's it sort of headed? And like Mike, especially you particularly specialize in this kind of advertising and marketing. So do you want to weigh in here and let me say to everyone, keep in mind that this is early days. So we don't know what the future will actually hold in 2 years' time. But what we're trying to do is, based on the information we have today, here's what we predict as a panel is going to happen. Mike, do you want to throw in?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later on when we look at some of the solutions that are kind of looking to come through. And I guess that's partly why, we've seen the delays. Like Chrome itself was supposed to already be cookieless, but they've had to delay that and delayed it and continue to delay it as they try to look at alternative solutions that kind of get that balance between that privacy and anonymity that we might want to look for. But then to Arielle's point is having relevant ads that are served to us that are actually useful. So yeah, to your point, Chris, in terms of what we do and some of the stuff that we use in particular around this targeting or retargeting as such, in looking at audiences and understanding where they've been and what they're doing, allows us to then retarget them. And for those that aren't aware, retargeting is those ads that when you go to a website and have a bit of a browse around and then find yourself on a news website or eBay or any other sort of large scale sort of media sites, the ads that then suddenly show up that look conveniently similar to the website you were just on, and you think, wow, that's very serendipitous, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Mike, you would say for companies, that was a quite cheaper, easier way to target and market to their audience.
Absolutely.
Without having to put as much thought as maybe we did before cookies and before we had that possibilities.
Yeah, retargeting has been one of those go-to ones for us for most medium businesses and small business in particular, because from a cost of advertising, unlike mass media publications and solutions where you're spending a huge amount of money to broadcast to a lot of people, with retargeting in particular, you've got people who have visited your website that you're now serving ads to. So they're people who have already shown interest. And then from a cost point of view, you're talking cents to remarket to those people who have already shown interest to continue to build your brand, build trust, and can lead to further sales. So for us, it's been an absolute no-brainer. Those sorts of things are going to change in terms of what we can do going forward.
Thank you. And so do we want to move on, or do we want to keep talking about how like these smaller platforms may be converting might be? I mean, these are pretty big things, aren't they?
Yeah.
Where tracking conversions are going to be harder. Like it is. I think marketers, like we all have said, is that we've got quite addicted to these kind of the capabilities of these cookies and following people. And so as those points say, a lot of those converting is going to be more challenging simply because you can't identify and then follow and tracking conversions. A lot of these things are going to shock marketers.
Because I think, because marketers use at the moment, one of the great things about these third-party cookies is that when you do actually get a click and they come onto your website and it results in a sale, for example, you can actually track where it came from. The removal of third-party cookies is going to make that a lot more difficult. So you may still find that you've still got to do, you're going to have to do more broader marketing for a start. We'll come on to some of those details. But what it'll mean is that you won't necessarily know immediately what's working and what's working really well. So you might have 3 or 4 different campaigns that you're running out there, but it's one of them that's working really well and 3 of them that aren't, and you will have a lot less information now, and in the general standpoint of as to where those which one is actually working well for you, and it's just going to be harder to determine. So you just have to be a bit smarter with the way that you go about it, I think.
And I feel like, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to talk about the smaller platforms. So you go on, Arielle?
Oh, I was just going to say the other thing, at least in video production, that we've seen because of cookies is that clients have been able to spend lots of money on the awareness and the ad that just all they want is click through to that landing page or website so that they can get that cookie, because then they know that they can go with the retargeting, and then that's how they're going to get their ultimate sell. So they weren't really focusing on that full marketing funnel as they should because of the ability to use cookies.
Because it hooks them in. The video is enough to get them infected.
Infected. Oh gosh.
That's true. It's true.
Mike, Mike, you were going to, we had a chat before about because there's a lot of ad platforms out there that rely heavily on third-party cookies, and there's global ones out there like Programmatic, etc. But then there's also a number of smaller ones, and their entire business is built around the use of third-party. So, Mike, did you want to talk? Because we actually think that this will have a critical impact on a lot of the businesses out.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of somewhat speculative at this stage around what could happen next. But certainly knowing that across all the different ad platforms that exist, as you take away that ability to track, then a lot of those will start to suffer from their ability to provide quality targeted ads. And depending on how they implement some of these solutions going forward, we could actually find that some of the larger organizations, i.e. your Googles and your Facebooks, could actually end up consolidating the market and becoming much more dominant in their own right, because they have access to information that smaller sites and systems just can't get access to. So it'd be quite interesting to see how that shapes out and whether they can take a dominant position around particularly display advertising.
Yeah. And so let's discuss that and what potential marketing can do in the immediate sort of space. And so this is what we think and we believe that it's the best thing to do in terms of at the moment, based on what we know. And so I think, like, Mike, I don't want to break your flow here. I felt like you were getting into this area where it's the potential marketing response immediately. What do you think?
In terms of what we can do right now? Yeah, I mean, if we look at, right now it's still, it's still kind of open slather as such as a market, and will be still for a little while yet. I mean, we're going to put this thing into context. If you look at who's not doing it at this stage, well, that's Google Chrome. So right now, it's still an open market in that 60% or roughly about 60% of browsers users are on Chrome. That's still a pretty significant market. And that's not changing till 2022, 23, depending on how they go with looking at alternative solutions. So right now, that doesn't change. But certainly within the next couple of years, it'll absolutely change. And the question is whether Google can kind of get through some of their other solutions that they're looking at the moment, particularly around things like the cohort side of things, and being able to kind of create those groups that we can then target, which, let's face it, from a marketing point of view, that's what we really want.
That's all we need.
In
terms of stereotyping, it's what we do all the time. So
back to marketing basics.
And so I was just going to say, I think it is interesting that the first movers have been those that don't necessarily rely on the third-party cookie for their business model. Google basically does have a lot of reliance of it, and not just itself, it's its partners that rely on it. So that's key for them. But you take the likes of Apple, their business is not solely made on the generation of advertising revenue. It's as much about they're a product business as well as an online business. So I think that is influencing the first movers in this. But I think it's like anything in marketing that we've seen over the years, that people will respond to it and then there will be iterations. And I think that key one in the new piece will be, how do they capture the data and how do they use that data so that it is not necessarily relative to the individual anymore. So it's more, your data is more protected. It's relative to you, so people don't have access to you as an individual, but they may have access to you as a group in the way that you perform, and that type of information might be shared. So I think that's that anonymous audience aggregation. That's that second bullet.
And what about and we talked about as a panel before to present this day was the contextual advertising, meaning that sometimes where you don't have the ability to follow people around the internet, what ends up happening is that marketers and advertising, digital advertisers have to search for actual websites that are related and provide contextual ads. So does everyone agree that it's more like, so let's say you visit a jewelry website, that they're being shown jewelry or gift ideas? Is that what we're going to be seeing response to?
And I think that's going to be really good, because it was the old way to do it, and we got a little lazy with cookies. But sometimes cookies is actually bad for brands, because brand trust comes from that brand treating you correctly. And when that brand was showing up at the wrong time, when you were actually in a moment of wanting to have love with your hobby of cooking, and then this ad is showing up and it's showing up in all of your places, you're not in that media spin, that buying stage. And so you can start to dislike a brand. Where if we go back to contextual targeting, and you're actually looking up what new yacht came out the other day, because we can all afford yachts, and a yacht ad comes up, you go, oh, that makes sense to what I'm doing in this exact moment, in the space that I'm at. And it actually can increase brand trust as well. So not only are they in the right state of mind to get that ad, but they can see your ad more favorably because of it.
Yeah, perfect. And so, like, I think that this sort of ties in with, we had a question that was just asked. How much do you believe email marketing platforms like Klaviyo and MailChimp have potential to provide in the future of small to medium enterprises, like collecting emails, segmenting? I think this plays in with the first bullet point there, Nikolai, that it's really comes down to when we start to remove that third-party cookie information, it's going to shift the emphasis on collecting our own data. And there's a lot of brands, like even myself, we do this a lot ourselves, where we have like our newsletters and things where you're allowed to, like MailChimp, where you can collect all this data yourself and give people a way to opt in. And so therefore they always have a choice. And so when things do start to shift where third-party cookies are removed from us, you still have that first party data to some extent. But I mean, like, guys, would you agree that you still need to prepare for this over the next 2 years, because suddenly all of that third party data is gone and you have to make sure that your first party data can compensate, right?
Well, that's why it's the first one on there, right? Because that's something you can do right now, is you can start working on your, addressable advertising and start getting your consumers to opt in so that you are prepared and you do have a good database. Once that shift happens.
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, the most effective marketing tool is still emailing. But then you've got to have the first party data collected. So you've got to get people coming to your site. And third party cookies has always been enabled you to, if you like, create the traffic to your site so that then you could capture the first party data. So it's going to be a bit harder. I think there's a double point to that first bullet point as well. It's that there will be platforms, and the key platforms are the likes of your Facebook and your LinkedIn and your TikTok, who actually capture your first party data, and they will still. So we're saying there, I think that they're going to become more prominent and more valuable, because when you're browsing within their app or using your login details from their app and browsing, then they will still be able to track what you're doing, and they'll be able to feed more relevant ads to you. And they're big players in this market. So I think you're just going to see potentially advertising spend push more towards them, because they can give you more data and more information on how your ad's performing, and then the audience that you're targeting. And they can do a lot more on around lookalike audiences, etc.
And I know we're going to talk about, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, you're right.
Go ahead, Mike.
If you look at the sort of Klaviyo and MailChimp and those sorts of email platforms, I mean, the fantastic thing about them for a lot of particularly small businesses is that they'll provide a great gateway or a great tool for collecting lots of information. So where many small businesses just wouldn't have the resources to be able to really get to know from a first party data collection, they just won't have those resources. These tools will allow that to happen. And email is a brilliant way of being able to segment your database and the users to your site, and you can track all of that and track them. So it's really powerful. The interesting thing will be when we talk about the shift in terms of data, tracking, is that we're seeing even within email now with all the prefetch data sort of things coming through, particularly with Mac Mail and stuff next, is that it's going to be a much harder area to be able to track people as well, because all your open rates are just going to be basically useless going forward. So that's a whole nother sort of, I guess, can of worms that we can open up at a different time.
Right.
But certainly I think in terms of those platforms, absolutely brilliant tools. And I think we'll see a lot happening in that space in the coming years. Yeah.
And do we want to have a look at the next marketing behavior? Are we all okay with this slide?
Yeah, I suppose just that last point that it will.
Oh yes,
because the ad is not necessarily individually targeted to you anymore. You're going to be more doing contextual advertising. Therefore, the cost to advertise in terms of display may actually reduce. So if I'm trying to put a display ad on a website, that might reduce because I've got no guarantee that it's hitting my exact audience that I'm looking for. But then I'm going to more value when somebody does actually click. So I'll probably pay more for a click. And Mike, we were discussing earlier, we thought that may actually persuade people to do their ad spend based on clicks rather than, opting for impressions, which is where Arielle was saying, you might, if you're doing an awareness, you might focus on impressions, but you might see a lot more ad dollar go towards click, I think.
Yeah, it's not going to be the only way to really feel confident that the work you're doing is actually generating a result. So, I mean, it's not really too dissimilar to what we do now. The click coming through shows us that our ads are actually working and that we're attracting the right people. And then on the website, it's down to the conversion that occurs on the website to then absolutely solidify that the ads that we're doing and the message that we're communicating is doing the right job to actually get someone to inquire. So that none of that changes, but I think you're right, Kristin, in terms of the value, the impression becomes less valuable because we can't be so targeted. And so we have to be a bit more, old school mass media kind of broadcasting. And so we value it less, but obviously those people that then do click shows interest, then, well, that's worth more. So it will be interesting, but contextual advertising, I think we'll definitely we'll see that rise again in importance.
Nice.
Fantastic.
All right. I've been trying to get to the questions as much as I possibly can. We've had some really good ones in there. I've been answering them as much as I can. All right. So, So the next one is, so that's the immediate kind of response. The next one is number 5. Okay. So the potential marketing response, like in terms of behavior, I'm happy to weigh in on this a little bit to start it off, is that with the potential for this change and this shift, it really comes down to looking at auditing your entire marketing and having a look at what you do and how you're doing it. And that's why, like, as a panel, we sort of put this forward, where we feel like it's that whole diversification of your marketing to reach customers. The same basics, the 101 is still there, where you reach a customer, you profile them, and you find information that's valuable to them, and then you encourage them to engage with you. And so we feel like there will be a shift towards more social media, customer engagement campaigns. I mean, I answered the question recently. I think that it's more about, and we've mentioned this throughout this class, is that it's about showing value and getting people to opt in rather than what has been before, where it's like, well, you've just been tracked. And so it's like, are you providing value and creating content and telling great stories where you're earning people's attention and they're electing to be a part of it and targeted by you, rather than just automatically, I just happened to come across your website and now I see you everywhere. I mean, what does everyone think? I mean, I know, like, I've seen my brand on World and the COVID stats, some of the COVID stats. I mean, it's back to what you said before, Arielle, sometimes out of context, it can be very damaging for a brand. And this is an interesting shift and diversifying. I mean, what do people think? Weigh in here.
I mean, from a video, running a video production company, a lot of these first party data places like our Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and they're very video oriented. So I do think video is going to be king in this movement. And I think it's not just doing video, because you can't just, as we said, throw something out there and then just have it follow you everywhere. I think we're going to actually see a big rise in sequential video advertising. So instead of, as we said, cookies just throw your ad all over the place, you're going to have to purposely bring your clients on this journey. So when you look at that in a video way, that means doing one sequence of ads within a campaign that takes you through the whole journey, from awareness, education. You have your short creative ads. You have your follow-up. It's building that whole entire journey for your clients so that they build that trust with your brand in a more organic way.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think that it's going to definitely, I think people will lean on these, what we call the first first-party data collectors. So you will see it push more towards social media. But I think even with that, and regardless of where else you had seen, is going to be a need for you to have more of an impact and more of an impression to capture people's attention, which just takes us back to being good marketers, really. Yeah, right. It's kind of like
we're all like jumping on the bandwagon here.
Whether you're a marketing, marketing within a corporate, or whether you're in an agency, it just means you're going to have to work that bit harder to get the audience's attention and for them to stick with you, and then come and the ultimate goal, get back to your website to either make the inquiry or make the purchase. So I certainly think that engagement is going to play a big part, but we were seeing this trend for the last 18 months, 2 years anyway, with storytelling and customer engagement, just with general noise happening within whether it be social or digital media platforms. So that's been important. So I think it's going to become more important. And your business does lead the way in that field in terms of video is king, definitely. So we're going to have to get smarter and better, and everybody is going to be. So you're going to have to really need to understand what your brand's about and what your messaging is really about. So why is it that audiences should engage with you? Why are you unique? Why are you relevant to them? And why should they trust you? Those three aspects are going to be absolutely key, and I think we're definitely going to see that shift. And it's much just not alone because of third-party cookies, but more so just because it's really noisy out there these days, and you have to be good at what you do. And
like you said, Kristin, and everyone in the panel it really comes down to, like, you can't just hope that an ad that follows people around is going to eventually wear people down.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
But I'm super excited about it because I think it's amazing when brands take the time to actually create something that lives and breathes their brand and has their customer that's customer centric and really empowers the customer along the journey and is with them along the whole funnel. So it's just going to be, I think it's going to be great in that sense of bringing that creativity and back into every brand's marketing as a requirement.
And so it's certainly an interesting one that when you think about you talk about those sort of back to the heydays of marketing, it certainly is going to be an interesting to observe what happens with machine learning and AI and stuff in terms of what used to be, or with programmatic and the ability to I won't say be lazy, but certainly it does a lot of the
lazy but be lazy.
This is where, the way we sort of look at some of those companies that kind of tout that, hey, let's just let the machines do all the work, and they'll kind of keep evolving through an ad campaign to find ads that actually work. I think, certainly that side of things is going to be so much more challenging going forward, which is exciting from a professional marketing point of view, because it comes back to actually knowing what to do, how people behave, how they work through that or flow through that buying journey, that we have to do much smarter ads, because we can't just, do a bunch of ads and then see what the results are and all the different iterations and A/B tests that are sort of working to see those results. It's a lot more challenging to do that. So we've got to think a lot smarter about our approach first to make sure that we get and attract those clicks, which is the important part. And then from there, we can track things. But up until that point, how do you know which is working for you?
Yeah, that's right.
I think there's, to me, there's an interesting question on this, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of press out there that suggests that that the large organisations will replace third-party cookies with something, and that something will replicate what third-party cookies do. I'm not entirely convinced that that's the way that it's going to roll out, because I think because we have legislators involved in this now, they will look for the intent of the application as opposed to, is this a third-party cookie or not? They would just say, what's the real intent of what you've just created? And I think that if you're crossing the boundaries of anonymity and privately owned information, then I think that a lot of them will get pushed out. And I think that's possibly, this is a big speculation on my part, but I think that's possibly why the likes of Google have put out in context what they intend to do in response. Like, they've announced Flock and they've announced their privacy sandbox, etc., but they haven't actually delivered it yet. And I think that's because they don't quite know.
They're not sure of themselves.
Yeah, they don't know. They've got loads of technology there, but they don't quite know how they're going to get around this so that it doesn't get tripped up by, legislators looking at it and going, well, you're still just doing what you were doing before.
Yeah.
So I think there will be, the requirement to evolve, and everybody on the call should evolve in a way that really doesn't have a reliance on third-party cookies anymore, because I think they will just disappear. And although we will get audience aggregation that is anonymous, I'm still thinking that is only going to go so far.
Yeah.
Mike, Arielle, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we've even on the chat been writing. Like, I'm of course really excited, and I have to admit, like, even though this hasn't happened, well, we said it is happening. It's starting to happen.
Yeah, it's sorry. Yeah.
We've noticed at our production company, because we're a creative video agency, so we actually offer strategy and creative. And I would say a year ago, a lot more bigger brands would just go, no, we just want a video. Like, we don't care to look into it. We just want to get people to click through and utilize cookies. However, this year we have seen a lot more brands engage in going, okay, let's look at this more holistically. Let's strategize and bring creativity in this so that we can, really be there for our consumers. So I think the brands are seeing that. They're seeing what's happening and they're getting prepared for it. And that's one of the best things you could do, really, is start testing cookieless solutions now. Because if you can do that and you can master it, you're not going to be in such a difficult situation when it happens.
Yeah. And so that brings us to the next point, which is what to do. And that's Arielle, you set that up perfectly. So let's discuss, let's get into the nitty gritty, because I feel this is where the questions are going to be, and this is how you can prepare. And so let's just go through them. So, further to Arielle's point here, I believe, and as a panel, we believe that the first step to address this issue is to audit and assess the impact. And there's so many ways you can do this. There are, first and foremost, it's like Arielle was saying, is look at the percentage of what your marketing involves with third-party data and what doesn't, and what is getting results and what is not. Because if you don't collect the information on what's going on right now, I feel like you'll be underprepared. And I saw an Adobe stat that said recently that 67% of businesses are not prepared for this next phase.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, and it's a serious concern, because I feel like marketing some people might be in denial a little bit. What might be thinking, it might not ever happen. And so I feel like
it's not just denial, is it? It's like the need for short-term results. So it's
yeah.
I mean, but really, if we look at that in a positive way, it means that whomever is taking the time to do that now is just going to come on top when this happens, because they've prepared, they've prepped, they've done, these different bullet points we're talking about and everything else that's going to evolutionize as we are on this journey, and they're going to come on top. It's like when lockdown happened and some just hid waiting to see what happens. Others jumped into action and made it go, and they're on top right now for doing that. So same goes with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And someone asked a question I thought was interesting, and it said, what kind of role do you think data analytics will play in a post-cookie world where there is less data to play with? That's a really great question. What do we want to do? Mike, I'll throw you in here.
Yeah, come on.
Mike.
You're the data guy.
Yeah. Look, is there less data? No, there's not less data as such when you think about it. It's just that to connect that data is much more challenging. And we've got to remind ourselves in terms of the cookie side of things, what's that doing? So when we look at our website and tracking what's happening, we still have our analytics. We can still see what's going on. We can still see where people are coming from. So we can still do a whole lot of tracking and awareness that way, because that always uses Google Tag Manager. So you can see a lot of that information. What you can't see is what's going on out there in the broader world. So whereas before we used to be able to we could target people based on their behaviors, you can't do that going forward. So it's not so much that the data itself is any worse. It's harder to attribute, but you couldn't really do too much of that anyways. It was more about how you use that data to target people as opposed to collecting that particular information on people, with some exceptions around certain websites and what they did. So for us, in terms of mere mortals and the approach that we take, yes, things will, data is going to be as important as ever. What we do and how we track that data is still crucial. It's not going to be quite as easy in some areas, but we're still getting plenty of information to work with, and getting people coming through to the site. There's just certain channels you'll look at with your data, and you just, unfortunately, you won't be able to adequately track that back to exactly where it came from or what ads delivered that, whereas we can do a lot of that stuff now.
Yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah.
And then we also got a question, like the next point was focus on your first party customer data. And we talked about that in emails a lot, but someone raised the question, what about SMS? Now, I personally don't use SMS, but I have seen that the popularity is increasing. What does the panel think about, this SMS approach? Has anyone used it personally?
Look, I haven't used it personally, but I think it still comes in the scope of collecting. The more first-party data that you can collect on your customer base and your audience that you're trying to target, the better for your business. So if you can collect the data that you can SMS them directly, that to me is like in the same bandwagon as that yellow brick road of, do I have their email data so that I can actually email them, they want to hear from me on a regular basis. So absolutely, I think that's going to become even more important. Yeah. But they are...
Someone said, for the love of God, please don't use it. Look,
I had
Chris, you just made my day.
Yeah.
We are all nodding in agreement there.
Yeah, like I'm not a big fan, but the person that asked it said that it's growing in success. And look, who knows? In a year they might play this recording and SMS is the big thing.
Yeah.
And they go, look at those panel. I mean, that's what the life, what's happening at the moment.
The video version of SMS first party data is actually Connectedtv. So the ability to use Connectedtv to do video ads, because they have first party data as well. So you're going to be able to be hyper targeted there with actual video content.
You keep going, Eric, because there was a question about this. So
was there?
Keep talking about it.
Okay.
No, because I thought you were stopping, and I was like, don't stop. There was a question asking how this will be about Connectedtv.
Okay, great. Yes, Connectedtv is an amazing way to do this. So you don't just have to rely on your Facebook or Instagram, or you don't have to go back to your traditional TV methods. You can actually go to Connectedtv and OTT essentially to target your audience, because they do have that first party data. So you can actually have that hyper focused advertisement on there to achieve your results. So we're going to see a lot more of our video creation go to Connectedtv, I'm guessing, when we go into a more cookieless world. So that's going to be, because programmatic's not going to be, able to work as well. Yeah. That's where that's going to, I think, take over some of that programmatic, and we're going to be relying on Connectedtv a bit more.
Well, that goes definitely back to the context, and so looking at advertising and video and so forth in context with where people are at and what they're watching and doing.
Yeah.
So
that's the walled gardens thing, isn't it? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, Arielle, so with the Connectedtv, are you going to be showing me adverts because of the fact that I'm viewing a particular TV series or movie, or are you going to be showing me adverts because I've actually watched 4 or 5 different things and you've therefore profiled me individually, or is it both?
I mean, it's just like Facebook or Instagram. They have first party data. So we can go straight in and say, we want female real estate agents to watch this video ad. So it's that same bit of format, but we found that right now that OTT and Connectedtv is getting a lot of engagement for the pay rate, because basic TV advertisement is still really expensive for media spend. So Connectedtv is a cheaper way to get your advertising across.
Yeah, cool.
Agree. Sorry, we'll get back to Derek. We'll ask for traditional marketing mediums. We'll get back to that in just a second. So does anyone want to talk about continue on this chat about walled gardens and using other organizations' first-party data.
Do you want to have a crack, Chris, and then?
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah. So what I would be thinking is, like, building on what Arielle says, is that I feel like the people will shift to, and we talked about this on the previous slide, was that I feel like people are going to start looking at, and brands are going to start looking at getting more involved in companies that have their own set of data, like Facebook. I mean, for me, and my choice would be moving towards more LinkedIn, because LinkedIn has a lot of its own first-party data, and you can use back a lot of those channels to start to target more specifically. And it comes back to that whole point of making sure that you're developing engaging content, and making sure that the people that are on these platforms electing to give their data to these platforms, do you have what it takes, and can you present with something that's they're going to say, you know what, you can have my data for something of value. And it's really, really important point about that, is making sure that when you're giving up the third-party data and you're moving on to other clients and other platforms' first-party data, are you making it worthy? I think that's the most important point. And back to that traditional marketing part. Yeah. Does anyone want to weigh in on this?
I think there's an element to the first-party customer data piece, which is a lot of the platforms that are going to win out of this are the ones that capture a lot of information about you. And that's why, at the end of the day, there hasn't been too much of a pushback as to the fact that third-party cookies are going to be there. Because I think, you look at the number of times, if you're a Google Chrome user, you can go throughout most of the internet now, and you actually don't have to put in your new logins or passwords, because you just log in through Google, or you log in through your Facebook, or you can even log in through your LinkedIn. So using that, every time you log in like that, they're collecting more first-party data on you. So these are going to be the big winners, and I think therefore those advertising channels will just get stronger and stronger. Yeah, and I think the other point to that, first focus on your own first-party data, is important as well. So we'll probably see more of that when you go on websites. You'll get. I can envisage more activity around, here's this free download, or here's this survey we would love you to take. Just type in your email address or provide us this detail, which, I think one of the benefits of third-party cookies is we're able to get away from that a bit of marketers, and we were not annoying them. So it'll be really interesting to see how we evolve so that we don't annoy our audience.
I think annoying is the wrong word, because I think if you utilize that correctly, it's going to force brands to develop and create content that clients really want to read or watch, right? So it's taking that moment, as Chris would know, or myself, video-wise or content-wise, of what would really what would bring value to the customer enough for them to give me their information. So I feel like that could, be a good thing in the end, is brands taking that time to create that content and engage with their consumers in that way.
Yeah, I think that's a much better way of looking at it. I think you're right. Yeah.
And a lot of people I can see, I can see a lot of questions people asking, like, and this is further to Arielle's point, is there's a lot around like those surveys and interactive content. I feel like I've been doing this with a lot of brands as a writer. Interactive content feels like it's going to surge in interest. And hear me out, is interactive content is when it's like, remember that Facebook thing where it's like, which SpongeBob character are you? And you put in a few of your details, right? And it would give you something back. I've seen a huge rising trend, is they say, come and do our content quiz, come and do our sleep apnea test. And all of these kind of quizzes, it's further to Arielle's point, is it's giving people information that's really personalized to them, and they're opting in. You see, where all this privacy and all this concern about, I'm worried about giving you my data, it seems to get foregone when you say, if you give me your information, I will give you something that's personalized. And that series of questions and highly interactive personalized content, I feel, is going to really surge. It's been surging and growing in interest over the last couple of years. But I've seen platforms like HubSpot and those kind of things where they say, enter 5 details and you'll get 5 different outcomes. those kind of things require people to put in their data, but not only their data, it's not just identification. It's not just your name and last name. It's also like saying, yes, I have this issue, or no, it's not, that doesn't apply to me. So what ends up happening, I mean, does everyone agree here? It's like people are electing when it's interactive, so long as they are getting something personalized back to them. I can give you an example. So I did some writing for a medical firm years ago, and this is what it was. They found that people, for the information that would be personalized to them, they were willing to give 24 answers in this survey before they pulled out. And what that was after those 20 questions, for instance, it would lead to 5 different outcomes on what they should be doing to improve their health. And I felt like each client was anonymous, but they were able to map out a typical customer from the way that they responded. And in return, they got information that was like, here's your results. And so to answer everyone's question, sorry, it was a long way around, is that things like Typeform and all that certificate and all those like those real interactive contents, and even like I saw there was a question about WeChat and WhatsApp, all these kind of things, it comes down to if people find a personalized experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does anyone agree with that?
I think the term I would use is useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably good ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than static.
What they get back. If what they get out of it is useful to them, then we're prepared to give up some of our information and stuff because we're getting something of value back. And so, I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not scary stuff. It's just
look at Mike. Mike's like busting at the seams. He's like, listen, guys, privacy is very important. We need to find a better way. And like there was a really good one from Nancy was, do you foresee more growth again in traditional media space? And will there be technology? Look, I mean, I think time will tell, but I feel like, I mean, what do you think in the traditional space? I don't think it's going to be like back to really traditional, like, back to the newspaper per se. But I feel like some of those previous mediums will be coming back. I mean, what do you guys think about this?
If they can adjust their pricing, then I'm sure they will get
well, yeah. Well, that's right. Some of those were really expensive, right? So like newspapers, magazines, all of those kind of things.
Been holding on to their enormous profits for so many years. They couldn't let go. So I think if it has a bit of a readjustment in terms of where they see where the true value is in it, there's still great platforms. They still work. So I don't see any issues there. It's just been for the past few years for us and our clients. I would never recommend that because I know that from a dollar for dollar spend, I can get huge results for them in many other platforms and channels. So if it adjusted, then hey, no problems. I'd be happy to go back to it.
Yeah. We had one question that was identify aligned website funnels. So this was something that I research, and it's very early on in the piece. I feel like this is not quite well developed, but from my research, what I found was that there was this ability where you could, it's still first party data, but what it was it said that there was potential research and applications coming out where you could link certain people's data to certain ways they were moving around your website. For instance, like if they submitted something on a related website for instance, let's say that I put my email in to a university's website. They said that even though it's hashed, so it's held private, when that person then went to another part of the website and put data in, it helped them track these where their behaviors were depending on the time and day and all that. And that's what identify aligned website funnels meant. It's very new, and I feel like it's something that is growing. But from my research, basically what they were saying was that you could set up, and this is tips to prepare, you could set up walled funnels where it could link data to certain other parts of your website to sort of see what people were following around your website. Again, it's very new. I'm sure if I threw it to the panel, it's not really a big thing right now. Does anyone know much about these website funnels and aligned?
No. The only stuff that I've seen on aligned website funnels is slightly different to that. It's not within your website so much. It's more making sure that if you're doing contextual advertising, then you look throughout your audience's buying decisions and also what other activity they do, and you look for other websites that they might have visited before they get to you. So if you're if you're a second stage procurement for them, you go back to the first stage. So simple thing, if I'm going to do some concreting, I've got to go and get some blue metal, I've got to go and get some sand. I go to the website with sand because I sell blue metal. I go to the sand website, I advertise there about blue metal because you know that if they're coming there, they're probably doing concreting. Which is
interesting.
Is slightly different to your one, which is more it's your within your website where you're actually getting them to put different pieces of information, and that's joining the dots on data.
But I liked what you
I
said,
have
Kristin.
seen that. I have seen that as well.
And that, to be honest,
but I haven't done enough work on it yet. Yeah.
But I like what you're saying, Kristin. Can we explore this a little bit? Where it's like, that contextual advertising, right? Where
that's what it does. It's
So
it's
like what you do is you
on
find complementary products and services and advertise on those websites and check that it links. That's interesting. That's a really good
and the more that you can understand, the way that you really get to those websites is not so much about just looking out into space and saying, rightio, which websites do X. It's actually looking at your own data that you've got on your customer base and really understanding and profiling them, putting them into categories, understanding what makes them tick. So you're really doing the third-party cookie work a bit yourself. And then you're trying to get those lookalike sites that you think that they will visit and be really interested in, and you brand associate, and you also direct them back to you. That's
so
key.
Interesting. And I know we're finishing up. And of course, the last one is, like we said, we've covered well and truly, is develop engaging content, written, audio, visual, all of those kind of things is where it's at the moment. It really comes down to making sure that you are earning your audience's trust to have the data rather than just expecting it, I feel.
I think that's going to be, just with the amount that we're seeing these days, I truly think that point of developing engaging content, whether it be video content or whether it be messaging or whether it be the visuals, to me, that's the piece that is really going to set businesses apart. And those that truly understand what their story is and truly understand why it is that their customer and their audience is aligned to them, they're the ones that are going to win, because you really need to understand what it is that the customer perceives as value out of your product to tell a good story and to promote that, definitely.
So do we want to just move on to the very last questions? If there's anyone else that has anything, and you can find our details here if you would like to connect with us. Does anyone have any questions? I had the question box up here somewhere. Here's Q&A. San said, any thoughts about like WeChat and WhatsApp and all of those kind of things? I mean, we've discussed this as a panel in terms of WhatsApp. I find it's hard. I don't know. What do people think about this one? It seems like it's a hard one. We get like WeChat and WhatsApp to work because it is such it's a very personalized kind of channel, isn't it? It's like having like your Facebook Messenger, trying to get there. I mean, what does everyone think about that in terms of how to use that? It's a hard one, isn't it? I know. It's a hard one because it's not quite been explored yet. I feel it's a real.
It comes back to me. It just comes back. If that's where your audience is and that's what your brand is aligned to, it probably works for you. Yeah. And you're probably also a niche player in that it works for you, because it doesn't. You haven't yet seen it as one that's working for everybody. It's not horses for courses like a lot of other options out there. And I just asked the question about why you're going there. What is it that you see your audience is there rather than in one of the other easier to manage platforms at the current state? That's my only question.
Anyone else? Oh, anyone else have any questions? Thank you. I mean, I'm not wrapping up, but if anyone wants any more questions while we chat, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Look, I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as we did. Look, as we said, it's a very uncharted territory kind of space that we're going into. No one really knows how to exactly navigate, but look, I shared the link to the blog that we did some research on, and if you have any other questions, please connect it up with us. I'm sorry. That's great. Yes, you do get the recording.
I love all the interaction too. I love that.
I know everyone was chatting.
That always helps with the energy, and it helps make sure that we're actually delivering
on targets
we require. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Thank you everybody for listening to us for an hour.
Yeah, right. about a very tricky topic. So Rinal, you want to take over here? Oh, Jones, you're so lovely.
Sure.
Everyone's so lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, look at all these
They are
people.
nice people. They're lovely
Love
people.
you all.
Thank you.
On behalf of the General Assembly and, all these amazing participants who joined us, we're really grateful to Christopher, Kristin, Arielle, and Mike for joining us. What a lovely session. I know a lot of you have been asking whether you'll be receiving the recording. So yes, please be rest assured that before the end of this week, we will be sending the recording over so you can take a look at all the information that has been shared, as well as the links that, Christopher has been popping into the chat box as well. Yeah, on that note, good evening to everyone. Have a good time. Looking forward to having you over for the next round of 2030 movement events as well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.
Appreciate it. Bye.